talk about something that's critically important to our marketing industry, and that is programmatic media. This morning, we released a study on the effects of programmatic media and to really assess how programmatic media affects our industry. Why are we doing this? Well, the ANA's mission is all about growth. Growth for brands and businesses, growth for the industry, growth for economies, growth for humanity. And as we look at our industry, we're often challenged to be able to do the best things for our brands and our businesses. And if marketers win, everybody wins within the ecosystem. But there are a number of restraints that hold us back from optimizing the growth that our brands should enjoy. And one of the things that began about a decade ago was the first looks into programmatic media with the WFA. The ISBA, the International Society of British Advertisers, did 2 studies on that particular subject. The ANA did one in combination with Adform. And with all of those studies and all of that good work, we still were in a situation of confusion, of an industry that was riddled by complexity, and as what we said, mind-numbing complexity, to the point where marketers honestly did not know how to make optimum business decisions using programmatic media. Now, when programmatic media was born, it was essentially the godsend, helping us to be able to make those media investment decisions that were going to allocate our resources across a more optimum spectrum. Well, what we've been finding out through these studies that that's not always the case. And what we've decided to do was release this. This is called the First Look. And our First Look study is because we're not yet done. But we've done enough that we wanted to start to share the findings of this study. And what we have found out is that in the open web, that is about almost $90 billion, there's about at least $20 billion of waste and inefficiency. It's about 23%. That's way too high. That essentially inhibits our ability to grow our businesses and our brands. And quite frankly, it has to stop. Marketers, we have to take our industry back, and we have to do it with intelligence, insight, analysis, data, and all of the things that lead to effective decisions. Now, we have a great panel that is going to take you through the key findings of this study. But before I do, I want to thank several organizations, PwC, Kroll, and TAG TrustNet, for essentially providing the foundation for all of the information that is used in this study and the second phase, which we'll release in the next 2 to 3 months. I also want to thank Tom Triscari, who's sitting right here. And the reason is that Tom took all of that information and synthesized it so that we could have an understandable readout so that the industry can truly understand and acknowledge the actions that it needs to take to optimize brand and business growth. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to the panel.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. Fantastic. So I'm going to do a quick panel introduction. And I also want to thank a few people, including Bill Duggan and Bob Liodice, for what was a 2-year journey to get to where we are, with lots of iteration, a tremendous amount of nuance, and most importantly, perseverance and tenacity. I'm feeling really good about what we're going to talk about today, and we've really assembled a great panel. I don't know why that's happening, sorry. A great panel to discuss it. So without further ado, let me start with Amy Adams. Amy from Discover Financial Services, one of the brightest minds in our industry. I don't know how she did it, but she got approved to sit on this panel on Friday from Discover. And as Michelle, my former colleague from Bank of America, and I know, it usually takes about 90 days, and you did it in 1. And we're grateful because she has a lot of institutional knowledge about this.
I just did it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Making me.
So, yeah, block her out when you tweet.
Be careful when you tweet.
Yeah. Mike Zaneis, CEO of TAG, and the Piccone of TAG TrustNet. The TAG TrustNet team is back there. Mike, you've been on this mission since I've known you.
Yeah.
And today is a big milestone for us who've really tried to work on how do we make programmatic accountable to the marketers. We're very pleased to have John Piccone, John is regional president of Adform, and he's going to give us the DSP, SSP hybrid perspective, help us to understand where the data is and how we need to get to it. And finally, with and no further ado, and to just echo Bob's remarks, Tom not only authored the report, he authored the previous 10 drafts of the report, and he was tenacious as all get out in getting it done, and we're very, very grateful.
With this gentleman's help, Bill Duggan, right here.
With Bill Duggan, that's right. Bill was the editor. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right in by sitting down. I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to have a toss-up for the panel. You've all read the report. Some of you have been reading the report for a long time. What was the most surprising thing, positive or negative, that you found in the report? I'm going to start right here with Amy.
I
You read the report, right?
Yeah, I
Okay. Judging.
I would say, a lot of times we don't know what we don't know, but in this case, I think we kind of knew what was going to come, sadly. But also, it just gives us a data set now to work off of and drive change and action moving forward. But one of the bigger ones was the stat around the average of 44,000 sites that any given campaign is reaching. And that was just a pretty staggering number when you think about, especially for brands like us that are using inclusion lists. And so how many are we really reaching?
That's one of the things we're going to get in today. So the average campaign that was in the study from 21 different marketers had ads appear on 44,000 domains. Their average inclusion list was well less than 10,000. So one of the things we need to probe is how can we make inclusion lists more effective? We'll get into that. Mike.
For me, I've got a theme today, which is kind of I'm the boring guy here to highlight some of the boring things. Somebody's got to do it. No, to me, the most surprising thing was when the ANA brought this topic up and to their membership and sent out an email. The response was incredible from marketers. Yes, we want to participate. We want to open up this transparency around programmatic. And then as the entire herd got cold for one reason or another, they didn't have contractual rights to their data. They didn't have a strong relationship with this or that provider. There was just legal hurdles, or maybe not. The CMO wanted to do it, but legal said, well, we're not quite sure if we can, or there were other repercussions about participating. And so we were salivating, going, yeah, we're going to have like 80 marketers participating. And ultimately, we ended up with, 18, 19, which is fantastic. But I think the point there is then as we open up and demonstrate that every marketer can and should have access to their data, then I think bringing the rest of those marketers to the table for round 2 and 3 and 4 is going to happen organically.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go off a little bit of what you both said, Amy and Mike. I think we don't know what we don't know, and then we know it, and now we got to do something about it. And doing something about it might change the ecosystem a little bit. And I think that what was surprising to me is that 47% of marketers don't have access to that data. That's a big number. And the principals, both suppliers and advertisers really need to have control. They're funding the business through content and through the product development that they're investing in. And you don't know of the 44,000 websites which ones work if you can't see the data. And that's the piece. That's the piece for me.
Yeah, the one thing, and that's interesting. We'll build on this later. That's shoot. The one thing that we'll get into a little bit on, if this is your data, your investments, if you're a marketer, are creating this data, and if there are contracts in the ecosystem that preclude you from seeing it, you have to ask why. Why can't I see this data that I'm creating? And maybe I shouldn't be doing business with the people who aren't sharing it. So, Tom.
Yeah. So I think to that point, though, I think you don't know what is this working? Yeah. You don't know what you don't know, but I think there's another way to put it, which is from Mark Twain, which was in the movie Moneyball or the book Moneyball, right? It's not what you don't know that hurts you. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And there's a big difference because you don't know what you don't know. Well, you can go know it if the will is there, right? And also like from, which Bob's seen me quote this many times around Peter Drucker, which is basically, it's what you have to do is very simple. It's, are you willing to do something? And we talked about this at a lunch earlier today around, each individual advertiser, they have to take it on their own and you have maybe this herd mentality. It's like a market approach, like, Lou, it's like a groundswell approach. One brand does it, or one big advertiser does it, and then another advertiser follows, and you have a momentum around that. That's what has to take place. And hopefully a study like this can spark that type of activity. And as far as, what Mike said, this isn't the first report that had that thing where you had a lot of excitement at the beginning, and then you have around 20 or so advertisers. This happened with ISBA's report. This happened with other reports that came before that. So there is some blockage issue there, which with the right people, I think, around a brand and with the will and the mandate and the leadership, you can push right through those walls if you want to. And finally, to Lou's point, you can vote with your dollars. And a threat is usually good enough to get the job done, if you're serious about it.
I'm pretty sure that's the only way we're going to take back some of these issues is refuse to do business with companies that aren't transparent or aren't giving us the data that we need. So let's get into that a little bit. Mike, from your perspective, one of the issues that we uncovered is this idea of data asymmetry. It's actually been part of previous studies that were done by WFA and ISBA. And at the end of the day, the seller has far more information about the inventory that they're selling than the buyer. And it creates, a marketplace disadvantage. What's your perspective from a TAG principle on how we start to tackle data asymmetry? Is it a standards thing? Is it a policy thing? Where do we turn to start tackling that?
So data access has been a journey, and I will give ISBA in the UK a lot of credit.
Definitely.
The ANA years ago starting to look at programmatic and transparency. Doug Wood, one of the attorneys for the ANA, was the first person that ever started talking about access to log files. And again, I thought, boring, right? Like, this was like 8 years ago, and I thought, who cares? And then I got educated, and I realized that is the source of truth. And so what we have seen, the reason that we could do a study and get from 15% the unknown delta that ISBA found a few years ago, and now we are at 0, because it wasn't that the money had disappeared. It wasn't a monetary problem. It was a data problem. And so we now have demonstrated that you can track every penny, every dollar an impression with the log file data. And so now what I think, it's not that the suppliers, it's not that the ad tech companies don't have the data and most of them want to provide access and are providing access in some way. It's just not consolidated. It's not uniform. One thing we're doing at TAG TrustNet is we are creating a data taxonomy that says, if you provide your log files with these data points in this format, then it becomes easier for marketers to access and to make sense. You have to make sense of the data. That's the key.
So just to put a pin in what Mike is saying, what we're talking about is not the single hop log level data that your verification partners might be using. This is a full supply path reconciliation of log level data. So DSP to SSP, SSP to publisher. And Mike's team, the TrustNet team in the back there, hanging out by the bar, drinking beers, because they deserve them. They figured out a way to stitch across it. And every time we talk to a partner or a vendor or a marketer, they can't believe it. And it really is. It's a combination of distributed ledger technology and a little bit of AI. But now you can actually see where the discrepancies were and close them out. And so that's really fascinating. So, John, to you sit where you kind of have a great view of the whole world and have a lot of experience in this business. We've been doing this a long time. What do you think is the key for access to data moving forward? Can marketers really get it the way that Mike and I are hoping? Will they know what to do with it? How can people like Adform help them really get to the next level with that data and start to give better direction, frankly, to the programmatic ecosystem?
So for those of you who don't know Adform, we're a purpose-built advertising technology stack for principals. And so one of the core tenets of focusing on principals is that you not only have to provide that data, you have to help them use it. And I think, to your question, I think many point solution companies are expecting brands to be system integrators. And they're not. They're busy making products. And they need help to bring all of these point solutions together. So the first step is to make sure that you recognize, of the point solutions, can you help consolidate? Secondarily from that, Can you actually make the data in an easily ingestible way that comes with some notion of plug and play of the values that they're looking at? And thirdly, being very clear about what business models are out there. So I think a lot of things that drive this is, and back to putting the control back in the principal's hands, we all recognize the business model. And then we sometimes want to believe that it's not the business model. And then we then go forth under that assumption. And I think if we kind of create some notion of a marketer's bill of rights, that we could give them an opportunity to say, hey, there is a bill of rights out here. And these are my rights as it relates to data and privacy and access. And from that point, you can actually drive the message forward together.
Nice. Yeah.
So, Tom, you and I have been talking about this for like a week, but from your perspective, one of the things that we found on the study is that 15% of advertiser impressions were running in made-for-advertising sites. The high end of that ecosystem is Outbrain and Taboola. That's the high end. The low end is all those little bottom feeders you see at the bottom of a publisher page. You probably have this ailment if you're nose ditched in the last year, right? That's clearly an MFA site. And they're, sort of defined by having a tremendous ratio of ads to actual content. It's a bad user experience, and it's really not a premium environment. But when you really look at it from an impression perspective, it's now over 20%. 1 in 5 of your video plays is happening in an MFA. Talk a little bit about why you think that's happening and maybe what we could do about it.
Yeah. So from a market perspective, so I do economics from a background. I kind of look at things through the lens of economics because those fundamentals are kind of tried and true. And it's programmatic seems to exist suspended from economic fundamentals and as far as markets go and market theories go. Anyway, when you have procurement, for example, that tells the agency, go buy me $1 CPMs, and then you have brand people who want reports to make basically what Chris Kane and others like Jounce Media and others have said, look, if you want vanity KPIs, we'll do that all day long. What you're doing there is you're making a beautiful market for somebody on the other side of the trade, right? So if you give this market, you want a $1 CPM and you constrain that with wanting to look good, then somebody's going to supply that inventory. And that's made for advertising and it's perfect, right? And that creates an ecosystem of a trade. And there's always going to be somebody when there's big money. We're talking about $90 billion a year that leaves DSP platforms. So that's a lot of money. And if you can be on the other side of that and capture some, particularly if it's a highly profitable business model, then somebody will do it. There's a hedge for everything. And there's always somebody willing to be on the other side of the trade who might not have the same moral compass or the same ethics as your common person, right? And I think, Lou, the other thing is just to make a point about information asymmetry. I think it's really important for folks to understand it, that information asymmetry is simply when a seller has all the information of the underlying quality of the thing that's being sold. And when a buyer can't assess the quality, then you can't price it, right? I'll give you the best example. This is the most cited paper in all of economic history by a guy named George Akerlof. His wife is Janet Yellen. You may have heard of her. She works in the current administration. But anyway, this paper in 1970, it's called Lemon Markets. And so you go to buy a used car. You don't know anything about this used car. How can you price it? You only know that maybe the average price in your head from a risk-reward perspective. So because you don't know the history of the car, you don't know if it's had damage, you don't know if it's broken, if it's going to work when you get it. So what happened in the 1980s in the US and then Europe followed was we have these things called lemon laws. And then we have things like Carfax, where you can check the VIN number and to see the entire history of the car so no one can screw you. We also have now dealers, like every manufacturer has certified cars. You get an extended warranty with it. It is certified with a 100-point check. There is nothing like that really exists in programmatic. People will point to and they'll say, no, we've got the IAB. We've got ads.txt. We've got sellers.json. We've got whatever standards you want to think of. None of them really equate to checking the VIN number or getting a certified car that's been really checked so that you're guaranteed the quality, therefore you can price it. And that's the underlying problem. And remember, all of these ads are in an auction. So how do you bid on something in an auction? You want to go buy that Picasso sketch? You better make sure it's real before you bid $100,000 or $1 million on it. and what is the real McCoy? And that's very difficult to assess. However, with log data, you make a pretty big step forward to balancing out this buy and sell side equation so you can price things. And so, I mean, you live in this world, right? And that's something that you guys probably deal with every day because you have a DSP and an SSP, right?
Yep. And to make that point clear, we provide access to the data to our principals. They have full rights to that access. There's obviously privacy conditions where you need joint controller agreements and we need to respect local laws, and we're going to see more and more of those come up. But that's fundamental, and to the extent where we've invited audits to ourselves to verify that we're doing that. So we're all for it.
Yeah, so building on that, okay, so job number one, next Monday, you get home, you catch up on email. Job number one is to just talk to the people in your ecosystem and say, are you transparent? Talk to the DSPs, talk to your SSPs, and we'll get into the SSPs in a moment. If they say yes, then say, give me your log level data. If they do humana, they're not transparent. And you need to start demanding transparency and access to log level data. It's going to take a contractual annual cycle because a lot of these SSPs have contracts with publishers, which is a non-disclosure on pricing, which I can tell you as a buyer is false. I need to know the price they're paying. I want everybody to make a fair profit, but I don't want to get gouged. And so I'll come back to you, Amy. Obviously, Discover Financial Services, a huge player in the digital advertising space. One of the things that we already mentioned was the fact that there were 44,000 different websites on the average program and far fewer on the inclusion list. From a financial services perspective in a highly regulated industry, how do you feel about that, and how does that make you think about programmatic?
I mean, it's hard. It's such an important channel in the media mix, and and not enough has changed in improving that channel in the past decade either. And so, the ROIs aren't any higher today than they were a decade ago, or a little bit incrementally here and there. And so, like, as an industry, we have to figure out how to get to the quality of the impression so that the ROI start to go up. It's an important channel. It's the way in which it's the backbone of our addressable strategy. It's the way in which we reach audiences, of now and in the future. And so, it's hard because I think, to me, we participate in the study. So, we were one of the 18 marketers to be able to participate. We had access to the data, and, so we have the right terms in place. But over time, I think it's just setting the right strategy overall, a quality strategy too, and what that means. And to your point, you do need to pay more to get a quality impression, perhaps too, and that is important to have the ROI come back, right? And it should come back. But having a stronger focus on PMPs, but even then, you're not sure if that's really working to drive a higher overall increase in the quality either. So. It's a hard challenge to solve for, as you're saying. Not just one brand can solve for it on our own, but we certainly, each individual brand, need to be doing things differently and putting, as ANA has put a spotlight, as this is putting a spotlight on it, we hold accountability to putting a spotlight on it too, because we can't continue to lose credibility in the channel. It's a necessary backbone of addressable strategies.
And can I, Lou, just on that, the power of a marketer is so incredible. We were, as part of this process, we were working with a downstream partner, not you guys, who said, "Oh, we can't provide log level data. We'll do aggregate data." And one of the marketers said, "Well, we're just not going to do business with that company anymore, right? I mean, there's some fungibility there." And we said, whoa, that's not what we're recommending, but that's the kind of simple statement. And just the dollars talk, and it makes the market move. So it's really powerful.
John, how many of your marketer clients actually have had a conversation with somebody on your team about this? Is it a number approaching zero, or is it more than I would imagine?
I think it goes back to Amy's point. They don't know that they can always ask for it. So there's a first step of saying, you can have this. Like, oh, that's great, because I'm building a new attribution model. Or I work with this third-party attribution company. Can you pass it to them? So it's the discovery. It's really your point from the get-go. Do I know that I have this? And then from that, the conversation's much easier.
I think for too long people assume that they're not getting it.
Yeah.
The last few years too. You used to ask for log level data all the time when you needed it for attribution models and looking at audience overlap, really basic things.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like just got used to the lack of transparency on it within the walls and other places too. And so it is going back to kind of retraining that muscle.
Yeah, I would say too, I think a lot of, agencies probably were kind of in that situation where, oh my God, if I give my client this data, they're going to beat me with it. So maybe I'll say, yeah, it's really hard to get. Did you have to really lean in to get your log level data, or was it easier than you thought it would be in your journey?
I think it was easier than I thought it would be probably, but we have some direct contracts in place. And where we don't, we have the right terms set up in our MSA with the agency partner.
Yeah.
So I don't think you have to have a direct contract. I know that's part of like an action kind of moving forward or a suggestion. You just have to make sure your terms and guardrails are in place with your agent and your agency to get it.
Right. So Tom, we get all this data. We're now in a position where we can see the whole supply path. What do we really do? What's the next step after that as a marketer?
Yeah, so you have the fundamental piece of just, you have a primary DSP usually. Sometimes there's a secondary DSP. Park Amazon DSP for a second, because that's a whole different ball of wax. We're talking more about open web, because Amazon DSP, you're getting their walled garden audience data. That's a very big special sauce. But so we're talking about open web programmatic. So you've got your primary DSP. You've hopefully gone best of breed and whittled down the number of SSPs that you're working with, because you only need a handful, frankly. And you, of course, have your content verification, the double verify and IAS, and they'll generally pretty easy to provide log data, those companies. So you've got all that stitched together. It's running in the background. And you with TAG TrustNet, for example, and others, but I mean, just to have a market view of it, ideally what you want to say, okay, you have your cost waterfall. You've got now a quality metric based on the price you're paying. So you can look at things in terms of QCPM, right? You're breaking that information asymmetry problem, but you're looking at your cost waterfalls from a campaign level, a brand level, a portfolio level, a regional level, and then of course a global level. And you could see, for example, and I've done this on projects with a very large CPG where we were doing this in 6 markets as a consulting project. And it was like, so the Italians weren't doing the greatest, for example, in working media. And they would say, well, wait a minute, why in Mexico? Because we did Mexico, Italy, Germany, etc. And they want to know how they're doing against each other. And that was a really interesting view, because then they would say, well, wait a minute, why is it that this same exact pizza brand, this frozen pizza brand, does so well in Germany on a working media perspective, and it's so much cleaner, and in the UK, it was much less? What are they doing that we're not doing, or vice versa? And you get instant sort of best practices from that. Oh, well, they're buying it from this SSP versus the other one, or whatever the story might be. And I think then the real Uber use case is, you want to be feeding your log data. Now that it's clean and normalized, you want to feed that back into a custom algorithm, and you want to take over the bidding control. So, for example, there's companies out there like Scibids they're in and around Cannes. And so, not a company I advise, just a company that I know. There's other companies like that. Google has custom algorithms. Trade Desk has custom algorithms. Yeah, right. So, but what you do is, all the custom algorithm companies will integrate with your DSP, the main DSPs, and you're taking over the bidding knowledge, and you're now bidding what is called in game theory and in auction theory, you're bidding the indifferent price. Meaning, when you're in an auction, you want to bid the price that you win and you don't regret it.
I think you should try a race board.
Yeah, right? Because you don't want to regret the price, because if you overbid, that's called winner's curse. You overbid, you got the thing you wanted, but you overpaid because you didn't have enough information to price it accordingly. Let the machine do that by repurposing that data, but you got to get to ground level 1, Lou, with just the basics of getting it together. And then that becomes a more automated case. That's quite exciting.
That's great. So, all right, so just to recap, so far, 44,000 websites, too many. Got to figure out why your inclusion list is getting broken. Hint, hint, it's happening in secondary and tertiary auctions. So you need to figure out a different way to make the inclusion list work. You may want to only pay vendors that appear on your inclusion list and not pay vendors that don't. So that's number 1. Number 2, you need to think about made for advertising sites and what you want to do with them. Another thing that the study revealed, which was just fascinating to me, keep me honest on the number, Tom. The average campaign ran through 55 SSPs. So what that means is that you're bidding, you're getting inventory in an SSP, and you're going to a second, and you're going to a third, and at some point you're bidding against yourself, and at some point you're really bidding against yourself. And then we come to the issue of the year, for those of you in the space, which is my carbon footprint and how I'm going to get more sustainable by reducing my carbon footprint. The amount of digital churn that you're creating, that we are all creating as an industry with 55 different SSPs working on the same bid is staggering. If Brian O'Kelly were here, he would be in the ceiling right now. John, why are we going to 55? You're in the how many more SSPs do I need beyond 5 or 6 or 1? In your case?
I don't know, Lou. I just don't know. I'm not touching that one. But what I will say about the carbon emissions, can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, thanks. What I will say about the carbon emissions is, to your point about Brian, we were one of the first companies to partner with Brian. And in effect, it's another data feed. It's another way of optimizing an algorithm, to your point, Tom. And we were able to not only see what was happening, but then optimize about it. And then when we went through that process, we found that you could actually increase return while reducing cost. It's like less filling tastes great, right? You get both sides of it. And that's what we're all striving for. And so it's there, it's ready. And I think this is what you were saying before, is we just got to roll up our sleeves and do it. So I would say lean in, because we can make it happen sooner than we think. It's just about getting out of the status quo.
Yeah, in a $90 billion digital programmatic business, if we can find $20 million in what we're calling waste, which is what's not either measurable or viewable, so there could be some good inventory there. It just might not meet our measurable standard, but by and large, it's waste. Okay, let's call it that. So imagine if you could actually add about 24% more return on your programmatic dollar. Now imagine that annual painful conversation with the CFO, who's asking you as a client to be, more performative. How are you going to improve the category? You could just go after this, right? And from an investment standpoint, to recoup $20 billion, the whole industry would probably have to spend less than $500 million in aggregate, totally, to actually police this with a variety of solutions, including the TAG TrustNet solution. We can call this out. We can find it. But running on 55 different SSPs, it's ludicrous. It's completely untethered from reality. And that's another thing that we really found in the study. So let's start to head home here, because I know you guys have all been patient. The bar is open, by the way, so please feel free to help yourself. I'm sorry? Yeah, I have one more panel question, if you don't mind. And then this is a layup, Amy, and it's coming to you. Amy, what is your view of the need for an always-on industry utility to deterministically match impression log level data across all industry participants now that you've done the study? How would this help Discover Financial Services manage these investments?
It's needed.
It's needed. Okay. There you go.
I mean, in practicality, though, how to get it done.
Right.
How to get it done.
Right.
Yeah, it's in
the
theory.
client perspective matters.
In theory, yes, of course. And, and I don't even personally, and I feel like I've been in programmatic in some form or fashion in my career for over 15 years.
Yeah.
On the brand and on the buyer side. What?
You did it in middle school?
In preschool. But honestly, this all goes back to what we were saying about measurement. It's just like, if you can get the foundation there from a measurement standpoint, and if it's an agnostic clean room or whatever it is that everybody will buy into in terms of allowing it to happen. Great. Honestly, I just don't know how to get it done without.
Well, coincidentally, I brought a membership agreement to sign for TAG TrustNet. No. But no, the marketers, now that there's beginning to be demand by the marketers for kind of simple solutions, right? It has to be simple, because log file analysis, reconciliation, and analysis is not easy. The report begins to make the case for why it's necessary and what the data points are that you should look for and what the ROI would be. And so there are solutions, and it takes the industry to buy into this, marketers to really drive the change, TrustNet's just one solution, and there should be a market. We've always talked about the need for a market for data and log file data, and we're excited to sort of break that open. And the more that we can standardize the data, the better off we will be.
Yeah.
So I want to open it up for questions. You guys have been very generous with your time. We're almost at the end here. We were going to try to end straight at 5, but would really love your questions. This panel is a power panel, and nothing is too geeky, so bring it. Just say your first name and who you are.
Hi everyone, Joseph Najum. I work at Reuters. I'm not a reporter.
Good.
The programmatic and partnership side. I actually came from the brand side as well, so I have really good experience. How can publisher partners?
Wow, that might
help
work.
support your efforts in negotiation when you're trying to get log level data from SSPs?
Love that
DSPs?
question.
Yes. So, as you know, Google AdX is really big. You can't get the log files. In fact, when you use Google Audiences, you can only activate them through DV360. If you look at any campaign with a brand that's running on DV360, you'll see that 60-70% is running on AdX. If you look at a different DSP, you're going to find, 30-40% Joe is still going to run on AdX, and then the rest is spread across all those other SSPs. Because you can only activate those Google Audience. That's really good audience ID, high fidelity, but Google only activates it on its own SSP. So the only way to get the log data is if the publishers who on the other side of Google's SSP, if they provide it directly into whatever the log data database is. That would be a tremendous step. Even if the top 100 publishers did it, Lou, where a big chunk of the audiences are, that would be a tremendous step for publishers to be proactive and want to jump into that. Of course, then on the other side of that trade, though, they'd have to deal with Google if they did that. So they might be a little bit fearful of taking those steps. That's a complicated thing.
No fear. I like no fear. The other thing you can do is educate and having publishers lean in. I saw David Cole earlier from TrustNet. If he's still here, they had a session earlier. But listen, SPO, transparency, getting to hire, more working media will ultimately help publishers. I mean, so much of this, we've talked about marketers, but publishers are going to benefit from all of this work as well. And so the more that you can lean in, and actually we'd love to have log files directly from publishers. Again, maybe the top 100, because what it actually does then is it validates the other files upstream. So a couple of things then, practically speaking, you could do.
Yeah, one thing just to build on that, like for the marketers in the room, this is about the time of year you start thinking about your learning agenda. What the hell am I going to put on my learning agenda that I need to learn? Actually taking some of these issues on from the study and saying, okay, we're going to start doing tests. We're going to start doing experimentation. We're going to see if we can get our log level data maybe on one campaign or in one situation and just start moving the ball forward. It's the eating the elephant thing. You got to do it one bite at a time. All right, I'm going to put somebody in the audience in a spot and we're going to wrap it unless there's any other questions. Josie, can we get this done? Is this doable? Is this a doable thing?
I have been inside of some of these businesses, and I'm sympathetic to how challenging sometimes this industry makes doing obvious, logical, good things for the broader ecosystem. But I loved all the recommendations. There was not a one that I would neuter. I think the order of operations was right. I think strong inclusion lists made a huge amount of sense and sort of drive change, particularly from the marketer side. I like the idea of the simple questions, just I like transparency and don't accept the first answer, but back it up with logs. And now, again, a little bit of sympathy to the people being asked for it. Sometimes there is a little bit of skepticism around okay, what is this going to be used for, if at all? And so sometimes make work is frustrating, and you're kind of I'm going to object enough to then get somebody to push hard enough to actually get it because they really, really want it. But then, of course, doing something about it. And, I was quite prepared to listen to Tom's whiteboard, actually.
Yeah, you would be. You would be.
It was the right track. I think the question here about how do publishers help, Google sometimes has been challenging to, provide the right degree of transparency. Some of it is because they do anticipate tons of scrutiny when they do things, and then, having to do things at scale. There is an obscure product that they've released that's kind of cool called Confirming Gross Receipts. And only if you are a complete dork would you need to care about this. But they have provided a lens into more transparency than they've provided before. So I think like a handful of marketers that were out there basically saying, this is the way we're doing things going forward. I've got a finite set of asks, and I ask you for things, I'm going to do something about it because I actually give a bit of a shit, and being able to push it out across a couple of their key PSPs and SSPs actually is like, give me a small enough lever and you can move the world. These are the small enough levers that can actually move the world. So I think it's great. So I'm super excited.
Thank you, John.
What a way to end the forum. That was brilliant. So how about a round of applause for our moderator and our panelists? So what's next? So we now have to move on to the balance of the study, but that doesn't mean that we can't get started. I think what the report does very, very well is it provides logical, common sensible solutions that this industry, this supply chain can easily enact, or relatively easily enact. With the knowledge that we have in front of us, we have the opportunity to start making a difference. So let's go do it, okay? We'll see you in 3 months with phase 2. Thank you.